All right, a very warm welcome to the YouTube family. We are reading the book Healing is the New High by Vex King. And over to you, Alka, who's our reader for today. I will pin you and I will also share the book PDF. Let us start.
Practice 3. Instead of wondering what people think of you, consider what you think of them. It's time for this chapter's practical exercise. Unlike the others we've done so far, this is something to begin practicing now on your own. But you'll then need to take it out into your life and practice it every time you have any kind of encounter with another person. I know that sounds like a lot, but actually, this exercise is small. It's a small shift in perspective which when you do it regularly will add up to much bigger shift. This exercise is rooted in a technique that's often used in psychotherapy and neuro-linguistic programming work, and it allows you to start experiencing life from your own viewpoint. When you do this often, you'll start to look at the world from the inside out rather than constantly trying to see yourself from other people's point of view, which in turn will increase your confidence and self-esteem. It will create a steadier foundation of selfhood and worthiness, and a willingness to trust your own feelings and wishes instead of first worrying about what other people think of you. This works on a vibration level too, because instead of trying to fit yourself into other people's ideals, you'll begin to consider how another people's vibration affect your own, if at all. When you meet someone new, or even when you spend time with someone you already know well, what's your focus? Do you find yourself wondering what they think of you, worrying about how they are interpreting your words, your movements, and general being? Do you spend hours after meeting someone new agonizing over whether or not you made a good impression? You're not the only one. We are social animals and we crave social connection. We desire the feeling of being liked and wanted, and top of that, those of us whose thoughts about ourselves have been affected by some kind of trauma are even more likely to try to be liked, to fit in, and to shape ourselves into what we think other people want us to be. This makes us feel safer because it takes the vulnerability out of our social encounters and relationships. However, it also keeps us low. It stops us from experiencing our true self and from feeling comfortable with who we are. And ultimately, it actually holds us back from having truly fulfilling, deep, supportive relationships because we are always hiding parts of ourselves and trying to be someone we are not. Some psychologists suggest that always thinking about what other people think of us is also a sign of unhealthy perfectionism. It's not that it's bad to try to develop ourselves and become better people, but that trying to become better people only from someone else's perspective isn't good for our sense of self. US author and shame expert Bren Brown writes that healthy striving is self focused. How can I improve? Perfectionism is other focused. What will they think? In other words, striving to improve yourself in a way that's healthy and positive means striving to improve for you. If you're striving to improve in a way that someone else thinks you should improve, or even that in a way that you think someone else think you should improve, you're making yourself less important than them. You're sending yourself the message that you are unworthy of feeling good just for yourself, and that as a human being. You're only valuable if that other person or those other people approve of you, what you're doing, the words you say, the way you look, etc. You're trying to be somebody else's perfect. And honestly, that's never going to happen. People hold different opinions and expectations, and these are ever changing. Cultivating a strong sense of self and knowing your own worth are incredibly important for inner healing because you cannot stay on this path if you're doing it for someone else. Undoubtedly, others will benefit from your healing. It will make you stronger, more empathetic, and true to yourself. And your powerful vibration will radiate out and enrich the lives of everyone around you. But that can't be the purpose of it. You can't heal just for someone else, or you lose your way or give up or take a turn that leads you somewhere you don't really want to go. You need to feel certain that you deserve to heal, that you are doing this for you, that every time you pick up this book and read a page or step out of the front door with your chin up or cry huge, infinite, gut wrenching tears, the end goal is you, connecting with you, feeling good as yourself, believing that you deserve the best life you can possibly live. It's frustrating sometimes that a strong sense of self is so important for inner healing. I get it because trauma makes it really hard for us to have a strong sense of self. It turns self and even body into abstract concepts. We feel detached from who we are. Perhaps you tell yourself things like, it doesn't matter how I feel inside. As long as it looks good, I'm good. I'm all good from the outside. Maybe don't really know what it'll feel like to feel good inside. Your pain has distorted your perception, making it difficult to imagine life through a more positive, healed lens. But I am here to tell you that you are capable of feeling good and rediscovering a steady sense of who you really are. You're working on it, you're becoming your own healer. No, scratch that. You're already your own healer. Right now, you're just learning to use the tools that have been inside you all along, from the inside out. Anyway, the practice, read the following instructions a couple of times over first and then let's do this. Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, filling your lungs with oxygen and then emptying them completely. Then allow your breath to return to its natural rhythm. Your body relaxes, you're here in this moment. Imagine meeting a new person, make them real. Visualize every detail of them, what they look like, the clothes they are wearing, how they are standing or sitting. Imagine you can hear their voice as they say hello and start telling you about themselves. Now imagine that as you listen to that person, you aren't thinking about what they think of you at all. You're not worrying about what your face is doing or how your hands are moving. You're not brushing your hair out of your eyes or planning what you're going to say when they stop talking. You're just listening, taking them in. Then imagine telling the person something about yourself. Make it brief. Maybe your name, one personal fact that you think defines you in some way. But imagine telling them this without any thoughts about how they'll respond to it or what they'll think of you. Tell them something that you like about yourself, not something you think they like based on what they've already told you about themselves. The two of you say goodbye, you walk away. Now imagine asking yourself, do I like that person? Consider the question, turn it over in your mind. The intention here isn't to be judgmental, but to be honest with yourself about what you think of that person. Did they give off a good vibe? Are they someone you'd like to learn more about? Someone you would like to be friends with? Did you feel any discomfort around them? Did you get a sense that they were trustworthy or not? Allow yourself to settle on a simple answer. Yeah, I like them. Or no, not really. My kind of person. Or not sure. Would be cool to get to know them better and see. And then notice your breath again. Still inhaling and exhaling in a natural, gentle rhythm. Bring your awareness fully to your breath and then let go of all the thoughts of your interaction with the person you met. It's happened and it's over. There's nothing more to think about. Open your eyes in your time. Have a little stretch. If you feel like it, reach your arms up overhead, lengthen your spine, release the encounter, let it go. What just happened? In your imagination, you met someone, you spoke with them briefly, you considered whether or not you liked them, and then you went on with your day. What didn't happen? You didn't wonder what that person thought of you, didn't worry about what they liked you, whether they liked you or not. You didn't try to see yourself from their perspective, you just looked at them from your perspective, took them in. You experienced the encounter from within yourself. You didn't try to turn yourself into an out of body, all seeing mind reader floating somewhere in the sky and looking down on yourself, assessing your performance. You were just you.
Relax,
meeting,
relax. If you're tired, I'll
meeting,
take up.
you were just you meeting someone and thinking, yeah, I like them, or no, not really into them. Create authentic and vibrant connections. The next step is to do this in real life. When you're interacting with real people, this isn't about judging others or becoming someone who speaks badly about people. Your impressions may well be positive, and either way, the intentions here isn't to share your thoughts about this other person with anyone else. Instead, you're practicing using your intuition to feel out someone else's vibe and to counter any tendency you may have to worry about what they think of you by focusing on your own experience of the interaction rather than theirs. It won't be easy to do this straight away. You still won't worry about what other people think of you, probably a lot. Don't worry about that. Definitely don't beat yourself up about it. This is a process, a healing journey. There's no quick fix, and it will all take time. But try it out. Whenever you remember to take a moment to pull that out of body assessor back down to earth, get inside of your body and think about what you think of the other person instead of what they think of you. It's a game changer, I promise. And the more you do it, the easier and more natural it gets until you start doing it without even trying to. Without even trying to. It becomes normal to you to meet others as yourself in your body with the confidence to decide whether or not their energy resonates with yours. As well as boosting your sense of self, this practice will open you up to more positive relationships. You will become more focused on nurturing the relationships that do feel good to you, those with people who vibrate on similar level to your own or on a level that lifts you. I'd like to make it clear that this doesn't mean rejecting people in your life who are struggling or who depend on you or need your help. Sometimes a purpose is to offer a support and unconditional love to others, regardless of the current situation or vibration. But this is about allowing yourself to also give your energy to the people and relationships that give back to you just as much as you offer them. It's also about not feeling pressure to build a relationship with anyone who seems to like you. Just because they like you, this particularly applies to meeting new people, especially if you've ever put lots of energy into building a relationship simply because you crave someone's approval. When you begin to act on intuition and realize that you don't need the validation of people who you don't naturally connect with, you will begin to surround yourself with people who you truly want to be around. And that will open up far more connections for genuine love and authentic connections and unshakable trust, which will help you every single day as you move along your path to inner healing. Because love and trust are non negotiable, we need them. We cannot get better on our own or by hiding away for the rest of our lives. Yes, we need to do a lot of our healing work on our own. However, we also need to be able to talk freely, to cry in front of someone, to lay our broken heart bare, and know that space will be held for us to be put in back together again. None of us, not one single person, is born with the capacity to be alone and be healthy and happy. Bad relationships may hurt us, but good ones, they make possibilities infinite, they are essential, and you deserve to have them. If you're striving to improve in a way that someone else thinks you should improve, or not even that, in a way that you think someone else thinks you should improve, you're making yourself less important than them.
Let's start the new
Chapter
chapter.
4. Go back.
Time. Let's start. Yeah.
Chapter 4. Go back in time. The astral body develops during childhood, but that doesn't mean it's set in stone. Now is the time to build a new relationship with your emotions. What did you go through when you were a child? What happened in your life that you were unable to understand? Not because you weren't clever enough or good enough, but because you were too young. The experiences we have as children can literally change the structure of our brain. That can be really good thing. With positive connections made all the time, but when we have a bad experience before our brain has developed sufficiently to understand and process it in a healthy way, structures and connections are built that affect us long into adulthood. As a result, the trauma you suffered during your childhood could be governing the way you handle experiences and your emotions right now. One interesting study published in 2019 in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that childhood trauma can even affect the way adults make moral decisions. In particular, the researchers found that being neglected as a child is most likely to impair an adult's moral decision making process, and male study participants who'd experienced trauma in childhood were more likely than female participants to find it acceptable to cause harm by personal force. Of course, not all people who were neglected as children can go on to be harmful to others in their adult life, but the likelihood increases. Although your childhood scene may have been intensely impacted by traumatic experiences, leading to cognitive distortions that have lasted into adulthood, you can be liberated through healing, and the practices featured in this book can be key to this process. Think of it this way: a child, let's call him Brian, is grieving following the death of an important person in his life. Brian's father tells his son that if he cries, he's weak. It's time for him to start acting like a man. He says, or no one will love and respect him. He then walks out of the room. Brian receives several different important messages from this exchange. He learns that he is weak if he cries, that he cannot be a man if he cries, and that he isn't worthy of love or respect if he shows weakness and doesn't fulfill his father's idea of what a man should be. Brian grows up and he starts to create a life for himself. The messages he got from his father settle into his subconscious mind as firm beliefs, and he tries to live by them. He meets a woman, fall in love, and builds a committed relationship with her, and then unexpectedly, Brian's father dies. Brian can't help himself. He cries in front of his partner, who holds him while he weeps huge heart-ending tears. When he calms down a little, he pulls back and looks at her. His deep-seated childhood believes that he is weak, unworthy, and not a man. If he cries, scream through his mind, and in her eyes he sees disdain, disgust, and rejection. He perceives that his partner no longer loves him because he's let the wall down, and she can no longer view him as a real man. And beaten down further by this new grief for the very man who forged his limiting beliefs, Brian can't take it. He's no longer able to look his partner in the eye, and he feels he has no option but to distance himself from her by asking her for a break a short time later. But really, there was no disdain in her eyes, only love, concern, and empathy. But Brian couldn't understand what was really there in front of him because all he could see were the beliefs that were painfully etched in his mind. If he'd done the work to acknowledge and release those beliefs, he would have been able to accept her support and move through his grief with a caring partner by his side. But he'd never done that work. He'd never known how to, or even known that he needed to. He believed without question the lies that his childhood trauma had told him, and so he felt and acted on those lies even as an adult. The trauma you suffered during your childhood could be governing the way you handle experiences and your emotions right now. Who's talking? Intuition or trauma? To understand why Brian or anyone else might feel emotion or take action based on limiting beliefs from childhood, let's discuss something I often work on with clients. I've talked about this on social media a number of times, so if you've been with me for a while, this idea may already be familiar to you. We can begin with the question: is your intuition or your trauma taking the lead? Trauma tells us to avoid being hurt again at all costs. And when trauma takes the lead in our emotional state and decision making process, it blocks our natural intuition. Trauma feeds the fearful, wounded aspect of the ego and drives us to make decisions based on that pain. In contrast, when intuition guides our decisions and communication, we act from a place of love and steadiness. Everyone has intuition, yes, including you. From a psychological perspective, intuition is an innate ability to piece together snippets of information and emotional impressions to form a gut feeling about something or someone. Famously, the great physicist Albert Einstein said, I believe in intuitions and inspirations. I sometimes feel that I'm right. I do not know that I am. Psychologists recognize intuition as a non analytical thought process that happens mostly without our awareness, and it forms part of the overall process of making a judgment. If you've ever had a hunch or felt certain of something without really being able to explain why, that's your intuition. Perspectives on intuition draw on ideas about the higher self or the true self. We'll talk more about this later. There's a sense of knowing that comes from beyond the thinking mind. It has more depth to it. Some people feel that their intuition is rooted in past life experiences, while others tap into a knowledge that can't be measured by science, an inner confidence that something quite profound within them simply knows what it needs, want, or is. But although we don't notice when our intuition is putting things together and coming up with an intuitive answer to a problem or a choice. Intuition can be clouded. Because when we are caught in a state of fear or trauma, we sometimes mistake the messages that trauma is sending us for something wise. We think that the fear based messages are our intuitions when in fact they've created by unhealthy conditioning and are quietly disguising themselves as a deeper truth. So, a useful way to start becoming more aware of childhood trauma and the limiting beliefs that were created for you and still affect how you live and feel today is to learn how to tell the difference between intuition based, trauma based emotions, decisions, and beliefs. Great, but how do you do that? When you are faced with a decision, a relationship, an emotional state, or anything else that triggers a strong reaction, take the time to sit back and work out whether your response to it is being led by intuition or trauma. Intuition based responses. A choice, feeling, or response guided by intuition usually comes with these qualities: a calm sense of knowing, a feeling of freedom, of being liberated, an undramatic and straightforward voice, no intense need to justify yourself with logic, a lighter heart in a sense that your mind has lit up, and awareness and steadiness. You feel that you're here in the present moment. A protective, guiding, and supportive tone, a clearer vision of the outcome of the future, the willingness to surrender to the unknown. Trauma based responses. In contrast, a choice, feeling, or response guided by trauma and fear will be more like this: an anxious and fearful assumption or judgment, a feeling of being limited or trapped, a dramatic, even frantic voice, an intense need to prove the logic and rationality behind your response, a feeling that your heart is sunken and your mind is dark or gloomy, focused on the past and perhaps using the past to justify your response, a restrictive and demanding tone, feelings of being lost and confused, resistance to the unknown, the sense that you must stay in control. When you begin to acknowledge these moments in which you are being guided by trauma and fear, you're a big step or a few big steps closer to letting go of your limiting beliefs. You start to accept that what your childhood self thought about the world wasn't necessarily based on truth, and that is truly liberating. If Brian had done this work, he might have been able to notice his trauma talking when he felt ashamed and unworthy because he'd cried in front of his partner. And that simple act of noticing could have changed his entire future. What could change about future if you were consistently led by calm, present moment intuition rather than guided by trauma and fear? Any kind of trauma may have an impact on us, but early childhood trauma is arguably the deepest and most difficult to release. After my first book was published, I spoke to countless readers about how difficult it was for them to start loving themselves. I found that for the majority of people, the hardest thing was letting go of the past. Early life trauma created emotional instability in you at time when you were still becoming you. You were developing, growing, and your development absorbed pain, fear, and wrapped up that trauma tight. It might have created a void that you constantly trying to fill or fabricated an intangible monster that you are always trying to run from. That's why, as difficult as it might be, and I promise I'm right with you, this has been incredibly challenging for me too. We can't ignore childhood trauma when we are working on our inner healing. If we did, we'd never get there. We might patch up the emotional wounds we sustained more recently and feel, at least for a little while, that everything's under control and we are stronger and calmer. However, the childhood stuff always comes back, even if it was subtle and even if we don't really identify with the term childhood trauma, because no matter who you are and where you've been, you do have limiting beliefs that you developed when you were young.
All right, I think we
I
can
think
we can close here. Thank you.